So for him to go into a WrestleMania feud where he is being overshadowed by Pat McAfee, I do think that is a problem. Good morning, everybody. So I've been putting off this video on wrestling. I haven't talked about wrestling on this channel for at least 3.5 months, if not a little longer. But for the past 3.5 months, I've been wanting to talk about pro wrestling, but I just don't have that passion because the build to WrestleMania has been extremely disappointing. Wrestling in general right now, extremely disappointing in my opinion. And so I can never get myself to record a video on wrestling because I didn't want to sit here and just complain the whole time. It gets tiring having to do that about the same subject. So I just took a break from wrestling. But with WrestleMania tomorrow, this weekend, I figured I'd give my opinions and see if any of you in the comments want to give your opinions. I know my guy Devin will probably be in the comments. Hopefully some of you other wrestling fans will be in the comments too, even though I haven't talked about it in so long. But the build has left a lot to be desired. I just feel like they have continually dropped the ball on women's wrestling, where Stephanie Vaquer and Liv Morgan has devolved into just a bunch of brawling, which I don't hate, even though one of the brawls resulted in an actual injuries kind of for Liv. I mean, it did fuck up her face and all of that. Jade and Rhea has fallen apart because Rhea Ripley is one of those wrestlers that cries on social media. It's something the AEW roster does way too much, but Rhea Ripley has been doing that too, and I feel like it has kept them from being able to have an actual personal feud because Rhea Ripley has become extremely sensitive to like any kind of negative talk about her or her storylines. But of course, the big deal in booking a WrestleMania is those kind of main stories. I mean, those are the two women's titles. The men's titles, not much better. I thought that when they turned Randy Orton heel, that it could be a good thing. I mean, Randy Orton is more known for being a heel than being a babyface. But then they brought in Pat McAfee. Instead of telling the story of all this history between Cody and Randy, they decided to go into a completely different direction. And was it them panicking because WrestleMania ticket sales are a far cry from where they've been in recent years? Maybe was this TKO interfering because Pat McAfee is an Ari Emanuel guy? Possibly. Or maybe that's just what they want us to think. We'll get back to that. I do want to talk about CM Punk and Roman Reigns, though, which to me also leaves a lot to be desired. I've enjoyed some of Punk's promos, but the entire build to this match feels like it has been Punk's promos. It's hard to build a WrestleMania main event when one of your main eventers is only there half the time, that being Roman. And that worries me that if Roman is to win the title, are we going to have a part-time champion? But what worries me more is that Roman Reigns is stale. He is a character that is now lacking motivation. And I feel like the height that Roman Reigns brought himself up to as the tribal chief and that whole character has waned. People still want to talk about his aura, fine. But is there really substance to his promos? When Roman called CM Punk old, and that was supposed to be the verbal punch to the gut to CM Punk, I just laughed and shook my head because I'm like, really? This is supposed to be the big sell. This is going to be what pisses CM Punk off. But all I've gotten from Roman's promos is him falling short in this feud. And I think he's been away a lot. Maybe he's rusty. But I think with him being away so much, he doesn't have the proper motivation as a character. It can be saved if they go into a big direction with storytelling after this WrestleMania. But Triple H's storytelling has not been existing lately. circling back to Cody and Randy and Pat McAfee being inserted into it, I actually don't hate Pat McAfee's heel turn as much as a lot of people. I think Pat is trying to be entertaining about it, and I think it is working for the most part. I think the con to it all is that it has started to feel like the match at WrestleMania is Cody Rhodes versus Pat McAfee, and Randy Orton is getting lost in this entire feud. And that is a bad thing because Randy is getting towards the end of his career, and he hasn't been in a match like this in a long time. So for him to go into a WrestleMania feud where he is being overshadowed by Pat McAfee, I do think that is a problem. My only hope for this entire mess that seems to be happening is that there is a bigger plan in place for the storytelling. And I hope that bigger plan, first of all, doesn't involve Jolly Roll, because I cannot stand Jolly Roll. Jolly Roll freaking sucks. You know, I don't mind him in the ring because whatever, he's a celebrity. But his promos, to me, the backstage segments with Jolly Roll suck. And they are not hitting. So if we're just building towards a Jolly Roll and Cody Rhodes versus Roman Reigns and Pat McAfee match in a month or two, consider that a big thumbs down from me, because Jolly Roll will be dragging that down. I really do hope there is these suspicions that like that's going to lead to some sort of like new corporation type of storyline where Pat McAfee and Roman Reigns are like the TKO picks. They're the corporate guys, and you can have Cody. I mean, you can have Randy involved with that too. He needs to stop being overshadowed to be a part of that storyline. But then you have Cody Rhodes and CM Punk as like your rebels going against that. I mean, it's a classic storyline that's been told in wrestling a hell of a lot since Austin versus McMahon, but it's been a while, and it could work if they have the proper mouthpiece to be like the head of TKO, and I don't think it's going to be Ari Emanuel, at least I hope not. You know, speculation for this entire storyline with Randy Orton getting calls is that it could have been Vince McMahon. That would honestly shock me if Vince McMahon were to return just as an on-screen character, as he's like trying to head up the corporate side, but that doesn't really make sense into the real backstage drama of all of this. And that's another problem too, by the way. I feel like the backstage drama leading up to this WrestleMania is far more interesting than anything we're seeing on screen, and that's always a problem. But they've been trying to make it more real with the things that Pat McAfee says and CM Punk says and Cody Rhodes says. They're trying that, which is why it gives me a little bit of hope that there could be a bigger picture here with a bigger storyline where both of these main event storylines mix. But we'll see. I mean, I think the obvious choice would be The Rock to head up the head of the TKO stuff. But The Rock hasn't talked about pro wrestling on social media for a year now. He seems pretty over being involved with wrestling right now for whatever reason. Maybe there was some backstage politics with him too, which is why he has completely disappeared, which is why he didn't stay involved with John Cena's heel turn. I think that is a possibility of why we won't see The Rock and why The Rock is not a part of this storyline, but it is still possible in the future, and I think it would make sense if that is the direction they're going to go for a bigger overarching story. But they do need a bigger overarching story, because even though some storylines were ruined because of injuries, like so many people in the Vision getting injured, as I was saying at the end of the year, the Vision storyline wasn't really lighting the world on fire. It's not like if we had the Vision storyline going into WrestleMania, WrestleMania's build would be so much better, because it wouldn't. One feud I have kind of like the build for is Brock Lesnar and Oba Femi. I'm just worried that they're not going to do the right result at WrestleMania, which would be an Oba Femi win. I fear that because Oba has gotten the best of Lesnar pretty much every week, that Lesnar will still be the one that wins at WrestleMania, and I do feel like that is the wrong choice because there are so many people behind Oba right now. The fans are behind him. He could be their next big thing, like Lesnar was back in the day. He can be that next prototype for the company, but they have to pull that trigger, and they have to pull it at the right time. I've seen some people say that if Lesnar wins, it's not like they ruined Obafemi, and I don't think they would have completely ruined Obafemi, but they will be taking away the possibilities of turning Oba into their next Brock Lesnar if he loses to Brock Lesnar at WrestleMania. Even if there's cheating involved with Lesnar winning, I think it's the wrong decision. And sure, they can continue the feud, and then Oba could get a big win. But I don't know. I think that match is airing on ESPN2 and everything. I just think it is a big mistake if Oba does not win that match and the trigger is not pulled on making him the next big thing. Although the next big thing to me is Trick Williams, which is something I was saying last year when I was still talking about wrestling, when he was still in NXT, that when Trick came up to the main roster, he was going to be able to bring his entertaining persona and get over easy, and he already has. I think the future is bright for him. You know, a lot of the WWE wrestlers have been appearing on YouTube videos over the past few weeks and podcasts, and nobody stands out more than Trick Williams. He's a great storyteller. He's entertaining. He's funny. He is vulnerable. You're able to relate to him when he's talking. If that can really continue to come across to the audience watching the WWE, the sky is the limit for Trick Williams. But unfortunately for everything, the booking has to be there to make it happen. And I have long lost trust for Triple H's booking. And all these rumors that TKO is questioning Triple H's booking is, you know, they're out there. That Triple H could be on the outs sooner rather than later. But who would replace Triple H's booker? That's a scary prospect. Who would know? But it's not like Triple H is really doing a good job right now. He has been struggling for over a year now, trying to book entertaining television and building these feuds. So we'll see, you know, that's the big rumor, but that can play into the on-screen storyline if they're really trying to make the backstage politics that are very interesting come across more on TV. Triple H got to be involved in it more. It could become Triple H and his Rebels versus TKO and their corporate people. That's a way I can see it going. That could be quite entertaining if booked right. Either way, though, coming out of WrestleMania, I hope we actually finally get an actually good, big story arc again from something.